Hello, everyone, and greetings from sunny Finland, Helsinki. I would love to be there with you, but let's do this now virtually. Hello, all my colleagues in Latin America and Spain. Uh, I wanted to tell you a little bit about mobility as a service. I don't know, I would like to do a raise of hands of how many of you have heard about the concept, but since we can't do it, let's do it a bit the other way. Um, so let's go. What I think mobility as a service is all about, it is about disruption in the field of mobility, in the field of transportation. If we look at any other fields, you need to see that how technology has transformed them and you don't even recognize them. We, for example, take the analogy from telecom and we see what the mobile phones did from the 80s to that sector. We can't really recognize how that field looks like. So my name is Sampo. I'm the founder and CEO of Maas Global, a company that is the world's first mobility operator or mass operator, also known as the father or author of this mobility as a service concept, which means that I've been the village idiot that's been talking about it for quite a long time, but lately also been doing it a bit. So how I see what it's all about, it's asking this one question and one question alone. And I would argue, and I'll try to convince you that this is the biggest question of our times for both economic growth, but also for sustainability issue, is to ask, and this is quite okay for you if you're out there to close your eyes and think about yourself. What would I here have to promise to you so that you would give up your car? And of course, give me the same money at the same. Meanwhile, now in my over 2,000 speeches that I've given about this subject, I tend to ask people, so come on, tell me how many of you have a car, and many hands up. And then I said, so tell me now, what would I have to promise you so that you would give up your car? And independent of where we go, whether it's Santiago de Chile or or Singapore or Tokyo or Vienna, the answer is pretty much the same. They say, if you could promise, what do I need to promise? I need to promise them freedom. Freedom, and what does that mean? And it's pretty simple. I need to be able to promise that they can go anywhere, anytime, on a whim, just like that, without any planning, without anything. If I can promise them that, because it's not so much about actually having a car. The root cause of car is our individual freedom, and that means that you have to be able to go to the places you love without any restrictions, without any planning. Now, car will give you that, but it can only give you that for maybe 3 to 5 hours of driving. So we have to have bigger dreams. To be able to disrupt mobility, you need dreams because car is all about dreams. It's dreams of freedom of mobility. We need to plant them bigger ideas. So if I tell you that, hey, instead of having a car, what if I give you all the buses, all the trains, all the taxis, all the car shares, all the bike shares in the whole country of Chile or the whole Latin America? Or hey, how about the whole world? Would that be bigger? And if we can do that, and even give them a certainty that look, if this one fails, if there is no bus, we will get you a taxi. If the taxi fails, we'll give you a car. We'll do anything so that you can go to places you love. It's our job to make that into a service promise, and provide it a bit like Netflix or mobile operator, and just say you don't have to worry about how. We'll fix that. Like, we'll make sure that you are free. Something like the one in the up middle here. And if we can turn it into that one, would that then make sense for people? Would it compare with car ownership? Now, it is about people. It is about the individual freedom. That's what the whole industry is so much about. Of course, there's logistics, but for people, this is about. It would be naive to think that we wouldn't be hit by digitalization. Like every other field, this will be disrupted, and the outcome is much bigger than what we see at the moment. We're only seeing the beginning of it. And since it is a big field, the impacts will be great and big as well. Now, if we look at the mobility scene, it is the second largest expenditure. So living, housing is the biggest one. The second biggest is actually transport, and then food, healthcare, and energy. Those are the five ones that probably will have more than 90% of your expenditure. And surprise, surprise, if we look at the fields that are still structured the same way and have not been disrupted yet. And transport will probably be the one that is up next that will be disrupted. Now, what will be disrupted? Out of this roughly about $10 trillion market, 76% of the value, the share of wallet lies on a car that is used about 4% of the time. So it is most likely that yes, that will be disrupted because that's where the money is. So if you think about what will be disrupted, follow the money. How this is done, it is, if you want to compare in the minds of people everything else you need there. And what you sell as a car is not actually, you're not buying a windshield and a gearbox and all of these. There's only few people that build their own cars like that. The rest buy convenience, they buy individuality, they buy luxury, they buy sustainability and time and money saved. But it's elements that are not directly the car. It is about that freedom. If we can bring those same elements to people, and let's just pretend for a while, people in Europe pay roughly about $700 approximately per month for their car. It's quite similar almost everywhere. It's a lot of money that people put in it if we take it monthly. Now let's assume that I come up with something that's as useful as that and say I'll bring you all the same elements and you will pay me the same $700. How do I make money then? Is by, of course, having the production costs lower. And for that $700, I have to promise, like the car, every trip I will take care of all your trips. Whatever you need is I'll fix it. It's all here. I can get you to places. Now then it is about production costs. For me, I know one thing about you. I know on average how many kilometers you will travel because that's quite given. People will have the same amount of time and they will have the same amount of destinations. And if that is true, it means that it's about the kilometer price, the average kilometer price. And how do I do that? Is every trip that I calculated that you might be taking with a car or taxi or those that are a bit expensive, and you do with walking, biking, using public transportation, micromobility, is money in my pocket. Even a small change of this is much bigger than any commission I could ever earn. So this is the model that I see is, first of all, it's the most attractive one profit-wise, but it's also the most attractive one for sustainability because it makes us as a mass operator actually try to nudge people, push them to use sustainable modes because they are cheaper per kilometer. Now, the biggest problem of why this isn't there yet, I mean, this is doable. If I've analyzed Mexico City or looked at Santiago de Chile or Singapore or even Indonesian cities, the pieces for creating mobility as a service, which is a combination of everything, they exist. We can do a combination. We can do a really great, cool services for people and really be up against cars. Now, why isn't it here yet? Because all of those bits and pieces were never meant to play together. They were never meant to work as one subscription, and they're all big, and they all have a lot of power needs, and they all want to do this alone. Now, understandably, and I understand all the fears of someone coming on top and kind of stealing customers and white labeling others. But the only way ever that we can liberate the money from car ownership is that we put everything else together. And the only way we can get this ecosystem to work is that it's an open an ecosystem where we as a mass operator use all the same modes of transportation, same players, same taxis, same cars, same buses as our competitor. Because otherwise we can't get this off the ground. We cannot make scaling, we cannot make roaming for people. This is the hard part. And this is where good ecosystem, good players like ITS organizations can help. Now, I'll tell you a little bit about what's happened since we launched 4 markets in first in Helsinki and now in many other cities to try this really out. It's early days, but there are some things that have happened. So we really took on the challenge of putting all the modes together, all of the different ones in, and even put that into a simple subscription. So you just pay once a month, and all of these things are available for you, which is quite an amazing thing to do. But it is real and live and can be done pretty easily. We've been able to have quite a number of investors that I would say is surprisingly good for this ecosystem to back us up also in this ecosystem. And I'm especially happy. It's hard to look back if you go into disrupting something as big as mobility. You'll probably grow much more gray hair than you would ever would have thought. But a lot has happened in these few years. Especially, I'm happy about all the design awards that we've been winning globally. Now, at the moment, we're offering few types of subscriptions. You can do just pay as you go, where no commitment, all the different services, the buses, the taxis, the scooters, the bikes, and even car rentals and car shares, everything there, no commitment, just pay as you go, any trip you pay. But of course, for people, that's not yet good enough service. So many of them want to do subscriptions. They want to get all of these monthly in a different format. Some want more luxury, some want more cheap things that they don't have to worry about. And we can offer a range of things. And we will come up with tens of different types of packages to suit the needs of people. We're not here to preach them, we're here to serve them. What is good in the outcome? We gave our 1 year's data from Helsinki to an external consultancy to have a look at what's really happened. And as a transport engineer, what I am from background, I was positively surprised. This isn't inconclusive and not enough. It's really early days, but at least the signs are good. In a city like Helsinki, where public transport is really good, the modal split is extremely good already, but we were able to have so that our users used even more of public transportation than they would have before. What really surprised me positively is multimodal routing that isn't really mature yet and isn't good enough yet, but still people plugged into public transportation with bikes. So 40%, 42% of the trips happened that way. And they use taxi to combine with public transportation 3 times more than they do normally, which is extremely surprising. We made quite a lot of elements to actually ease that off, but it shows that there is capability, at least, that there is potential in this. Now, many of you also want to wonder, because these businesses, they have to work for the end user. If we don't make something as attractive as a car, we can forget about everything. That has to happen. We need to make sure that it makes sense to invest, so they need to work as business. So it needs to be a B2C business that makes sense. But at the same time, it needs to drive societal goals, because if we don't get all of them to match, we're not really solving the issues. We believe that there's a strong societal angle in this as well, and the society should play and make the game rules, not me, not us, because it's a big enough thing for having it that way. Now, for society, uh, at least in Europe, it's the only business that hasn't improved at all in from 90s. So now about 25% of emissions are done by transportation. It'll be 40 by 2030, so it seems. Now, people tend to say that we have that people will not like to give up their cars. In Chile, we love the cars and so on, but it's not true. Everywhere we take this, it seems that at least a third of people are actually willing to give up their cars quite fast. Actually, in the EU, this means that about 70 million cars are waiting for some type of other service to come in to compete against their car ownership or to substitute their car one way or another, which is actually quite surprising to me. Moving on from that, let's say one of the biggest issues in cities are the parking spaces. You need to have parking spaces until somebody promises that you can have a perfectly good life without that. And that's where we come into play. So we're trialing this in Japan, that we're actually taking away some of the parking spaces and combining your living together with your mobility in a way that you can actually say that, okay, I have all the things that I needed. I just don't need to buy the car. I don't need to have the parking space. It's much more livable, and I can actually have my freedom, which actually would bring huge benefits to society and probably even lead to something like this, where now the whole urban planning is based on corridors and will end up being more hub based. Because of course, if the demand changes, why wouldn't the infrastructure? But these will come in time. It's my prediction. Now, of course, we did have a bit of an impact of COVID, but it's good to say that actually the multimodal approach showed that even though the public transport based subscriptions went down, we were able to set it off by the bike subscriptions, which means that these will come back to public transportation, not resorting back to their own cars, which is actually quite a good and promising thing about mobility as a service. And as the last one to conclude, we just got some while ago a 5-star rating for someone who's been using the high-end cars for 40 years. Gave us a 5-star, gave up his cars, and is already saying that it's exceeding all his expectations. So if 50 plus men can change, the rest of the world can do as well. So there is a lot of hope in mobility as a service. Thank you all.